to the final vlogs of the BookTube Prize for 2020. And I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm pretty excited. So I'm really looking forward to the 5 books that I have to read for this round. They are all books that I've had on my TBR and I'm interested in reading, so that's pretty positive. I'm going to be starting with Women Talking by Miriam Taves. I've heard so much about this book. It's been around for quite a while. Canadian writer. So I'm going to start off with this one. And I also got Lanny by Max Porter and 10 Minutes, 38 Seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak. So these will probably be my first 3 that I'll be reading in August. And then I will read Girl, Woman, Other and A Single Thread in September, and I've already read The Beekeeper of Aleppo. I read that in round 2. So yeah, a little bit less pressure this round than last round, which I'm very excited about because I could do with a little less pressure in that area. So I will check in when I'm about halfway through Women Talking. Oops, Women Talking. Hi everybody, I wanted to check in about Women Talking by Miriam Taves. I'm over halfway now. This is my first Miriam Taves, so I've heard a lot about her as a Canadian author, as a quite beloved author, so I was really anticipating beginning this, and it's fine. I don't feel particularly invested in the story. There's a few characters that I like, but I do find that Taves' style of establishing characters is a bit too sparse for me. And I find that the dialogue between the women is very philosophical and intellectual, but not very emotional. There's not a lot of emotional resonance. And I can see that that may be a result of Mennonite culture, and because Taves grew up in Mennonite culture, she certainly has more of an inside track about that than I do. So her like how she's writing these characters, how she's conveying these characters, could be very much a product of the way women are in Mennonite society. But for me, in terms of attaching and connecting with this novel, I don't feel very connected to it. As a structure of patriarchy, as an intellectual exercise on women discussing the ramifications of living in a patriarchal culture and how it's affected their lives. It's very interesting. Also super frustrating to read about the obvious inequities in this village and how the bishop, the leader, is basically a dictator and breaks the rules and is not maintaining a society that is just. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it right now. I think for these vlogs, it's going to be a little bit different than the others because this is the final round, because a book that I read previously, The Beekeeper of Aleppo, is in this round. And it's the only book that I have read. It's the one to beat right now. So this book, I can tell you, is not going to beat The Beekeeper of Aleppo for me because I'm not connecting with it the way I did with that book. So, it's still got a really interesting perspective that I have not really read about before. I have read books about Amish culture, but I have not read about Mennonite culture. And I think based on this book, I would read another Miriam Taves just to make sure that her style is not compatible with me. I mean, the other thing that I'll say about this book is that it was very hyped. And I seem to struggle with hyped books. And, you know, I like to believe that when I go into a book, no matter how many praises I've heard of it or no matter how much I've heard against it, I can kind of form my own, you know, unbiased opinion. But I do, especially in my experience in the last round of fiction with Red at the Bone, I think the hype around books really does get into my head, and it makes the standards for a book really, really high for me. So, you know, the fact that I'm over halfway and I haven't really connected with this emotionally or with the characters enough shows me that this is just not going to be a book that is going to resonate with me. Yeah, I'm curious as to why she gives no physical descriptors for these women. She gives very few. And seeing some people who have critiqued the fact that this book is shown through August's perspective, the male who's recording the discussion between the women, I see the problem with that for sure. Because what it's doing is it's taking this agency that these women are trying to claim, and it's filtering it through a male perspective. Granted, he's a male that's been out in the world, and that gives him this perspective of knowing the way the rest of society functions, knowing the fact that these women are in fact, you know, living under patriarchal culture and do not have agency. And so he's able to interpret what they're saying with that vernacular. He's able to say, oh yeah, they mean this, when they're saying this kind of metaphoric word. And I see why she did it. I want to be more in the internal dialogue of these women. I want to know how they're feeling. I want to know how, you know, the heart-wrenching nature of the decisions they're making in a more personal way. And I feel very kept at arm's length by August's interpretation of their feelings. So I will say, though, that, you know, there's a lot of meat in this book. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to mull over. So I think in that way, you know, it's a successful book. And yeah, I'll check in again once I've gotten to the end. Hi. So we just finished Women Talking by Miriam Taves. And, you know, it was fine. It was interesting. It had a lot about religion and, you know, how to approach your you know, dealing with an issue. It certainly wasn't a super satisfying read for me. I think that August's story was told with a lot of empathy. I think I connected with a couple of the characters. I think that there was a lot of nuance in terms of how the story played out and how the women ended up, you know, kind of becoming the thing that they were trying to avoid a little bit at the end there. But yeah, just as an overall story, I just didn't connect with it the way I would have hoped to. So I think I definitely will try another Miriam Taves. I may try All My Puny Sorrows because I think that one is one of, I don't know, what I'll probably do is read through the synopses of her other books and then pick the one that I think fits piques my interest the most. But, you know, for me, the whole premise of this book just didn't really go into It didn't really have an emotional undercurrent, which I feel is important. I think the only emotional character in this story, there were two emotional characters, Salome, one of the women, and August. And everyone else was very restrained and, things weren't really explained. They weren't really gone into the fate of the women, what happens to them. So I think she did an interesting job exploring a topic from a very specific standpoint. It just wasn't the angle that resonated most with me, I think. So, yeah. So I think the next book I'm going to get into is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world. I think I'll go with that one next. And so I will check in when I'm about halfway through. Hi, everybody. So I'm about halfway through 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world by Elif Shafak. And wow, this is a very incredible novel. And I think my pace with it is very, very slow. One of the reasons is that the text is actually quite small. So even though it's only a 300 and something page book, the text is actually pretty tiny. So that is, there's a lot in here. The other reason is this is just a really intense story, which, I probably realized it would be when I knew it was on the list, because you're talking about sex work, you're talking about women's rights, you're talking about a country with a very tumultuous political system and society. So reading it it's not a quick read, and I wouldn't want to read it quickly because I need time to kind of digest everything that comes up. The structure of the book is quite interesting. You probably know the premise. It is a sex worker named Leela who has been killed, and her brain is still firing even after her heart has stopped beating for 10 minutes and 38 seconds. And so the narration is broken down into each minute after her heart stops in part 1 of the book. And she's also introducing you to the 5, and these 5 are her basically her found family, the family of her heart, the people who she's met who have touched her, who are important to her as friends, but also, that found family, which can be so important for people who find themselves on the fringes of society for whatever reason, and who are ostracized from their families of birth. So, it's really intense. And I'm enjoying it. I think the writing is very good, and just, I don't think I've read anything else set in Turkey, any other novel set in Turkey. So learning about Turkey, learning about Leela's life and all of her friends' lives and the different perspectives that are being shared. A little person is in here, a woman who abandoned her marriage and is therefore under constant threat of an honor killing, a transvestite woman, a man who is working on leftist revolutionary side. And just in case you didn't know the time period, also this is set post World War II, so mid 1950s into the and up through the 60s, 70s. So yeah, I think I'm really enjoying it so far. I think that I've found someone who's writing, I will definitely be searching out again. I know Dee Dee from Brown Girl Reading really loves Elif Shafak's work. I think she's read some of her earlier work. And so I think her writing style is very much up my alley. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But like I said, it is tough subject matter, so it's not moving quickly. And I was hoping to get to Lanny as well in the month of August, but I am not sure that that's going to happen. I probably won't start Lanny until we're into September. And I did get an audio copy of A Single Thread by Tracey Chevalier because it was available and I finished my other audiobook for the month. So I thought I would just download it and get started on listening to it now. And so Lanny and Girl, Woman, Other will probably be my September reads for the BookTube prize. I'm kind of amazed that this is my last set of books. And, you know, certainly so far, I think both of these books are good. And having already read The Beekeeper of Aleppo, I think, you know, I have some really good contenders here. So very excited to keep going with this. So I'll check in again once I've finished 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World. Hi, everybody. I finished 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak. And this was excellent. This woman is a wonderful writer and storyteller. The pace was really interesting. The relationships developed between the characters were great. I thought that the characters were quite believable, even though there were a few plot points that were a little bit, could have been construed as a little bit far-fetched. They still were grounded enough in reality that you were rooting for the characters and wanted to believe what they were standing for. I will definitely read all of Elif Shafak's work. Her way of writing is quite beautiful, but it's not overly flowery. And I think that what I really appreciated about this is how it brought Istanbul to life and wove in politics, wove in women's rights, wove in just so many perspectives. But it didn't feel like too many to me ever. There weren't too many characters. I think that is her strength as a writer, is that she's able to give you tiny snippets of a situation, and some of these characters you only see once in the book, but they do move the plot along, because I think Istanbul itself was a character in this book. And so you were able to really understand the city as a character and how complex and how layered her narrative was. So excellent book. This is definitely in the top 3 for me right now, having read, this is the 3rd one. So I'm not going to reread The Beekeeper of Aleppo, which I read in the second round, my first fiction round. It was my number 1. So this book and The Beekeeper of Aleppo are now in competition for number 1 spot. I didn't feel as emotionally connected to the characters in this book as I did to the ones in The Beekeeper of Aleppo, but I think that the literary merit and the construction and the overall craft of a writer is superior in this book. So that's a bit tricky for me. I think I'm going to have to get Lanny, Girl, Woman, Other, and a single thread completed, and then I'm going to have to deliberate as to my top 3. Yeah, I have started I have started A Single Thread by Tracey Chevalier on audio, and I am just halfway through Lanny, so I will be checking in about Lanny maybe later today. And yeah, so that's where I am right now. Hey everybody. So I thought I would come out here and read on the balcony this afternoon because I don't think there's going to be a lot of days left that are this warm and sunny and balcony conducive. So I just wanted to check in with you about Lanny by Max Porter. So I'm about halfway. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas going on in this novel. You are following a young boy named Lanny, his mother, his father, an artist that his parents know who live in the village, who is giving him art lessons, and Great Papa Toothwort, who is essentially a mythical entity who has a voice in the village. And I find his character the most interesting so far because I think it's really interesting to give a voice to a mythical creature, and the idea that this creature lives in the village and observes everything in the village and kind of absorbs the village and influences the way people act in the village. I think all those things are really interesting. The execution is okay. I'm not in love with the way the story is being told. Papa Toothwort, or Dead, sorry, his name's Dead Papa, not Great, but Dead Papa Toothwort. You can see here he at first it's in third person, and then as it moves, Dead Papa Toothwort starts to speak in the first person. Oh no, he's always speaking in, okay, he stays in third person. But you're also getting these little lines of snippets of words from the village inhabitants. And so that's what the village inhabitants are talking about. They're like, and you just get little one-lines of what they're saying, the way he would be experiencing their conversations. You know, it's interesting, but I feel like it's a bit gimmicky because he does it through the whole first part of the book. So that's about 100 pages. And I feel like after the third time, I didn't feel there was a point to that. The only point I can really say that continued after that was a kind of the focus of the words changed, so the words started to get darker and more twisted. But I don't think it needed to be such a big part of that first part of the book. I think you could have done it a couple times and then really gone into that narrative talking about the way Papa Toothwort was moving through the village. I think that would have been just fine. I just don't think those words were necessary, and I didn't find there was anything very poetic or lovely about the words. A lot of the words were actually swear words or, you know, kind of slang, and nothing that I thought enhanced the story for me. And Lanny is one of those exceptional children. And being a parent myself of 2 boys, I'm not a huge fan of that type of perspective on children. Not because it's not interesting to think about a child who is this very spiritual, old soul connected to nature, because I think that's pretty cool in and of itself. But the parents are they're just kind of fumbling their way through raising this child. And they're not very good communicators, the parents themselves. So they're both kind of in their own worlds, and they both are kind of disdainful towards each other. And I don't know, I'm curious as to where this is going, where the plot is going to move from here. And I see that in the part 2, the perspective changes, and we're no longer going from character to character's perspective. And so I'm not sure about this book and how I'm getting along with it. I mean, this book has been hyped a lot on BookTube. A lot of the British booktubers that I follow have talked about it a lot and love Max Porter. I am not adverse to magical realism at all. I loved Robbie Arnott's Flames, and I feel like that's what this book is trying to do. It's trying to have that feeling that Robbie Arnott's Flames has, and I think Robbie Arnott does it better. So I'm kind of comparing it to that because it's the only other book like in this style that I think I've read. Yeah. So far it hasn't really impressed me very much. It's a short book. I only have 100 pages left. I want to try to finish it by Sunday. So I will check in again when I have finished it, and we will see if it improved in part 2 and 3, or if it kind of continued to be just a middle of the road book for me. Hey everybody. So I finished Lanny 2 days ago, and I've been kind of thinking about my overall reaction to it. So I think parts 2 and 3 obviously solidified for me the overall theme of the book and the plot. And I think overall, this is an interesting novel. It covers a lot of interesting parts of society. So if you're thinking about a small town village and all of the kind of mentality and way of living and way of life that goes on in a small town, small villages, where you have people whose families have lived there for a really long time and who spend their whole lives there, immersed in that place. And then you have newcomers coming in who inevitably will incite some sort of judgment from the people who lived there previously. There's a lot of that. So a lot of exploring of gossip and judgments and petty misunderstandings between different types of people living different types of lives. You have the exploration of what happens to parents when something happens to their child, and how they're judged and how they judge themselves or how they react to a tragic event. And you have this underlying mystical element, kind of like nature, the spirit of nature being mischievous and potentially dangerous, and how reverence for that can redeem you or save you, I think are kind of the main themes that I pulled from it. I think the execution for me was not necessarily as groundbreaking as I think this book has kind of been heralded as something fresh and new. And for me, I think it just so happens that the way Max Porter explored this story, having read Flames by Robbie Arnott earlier this year, I feel like there's a lot of similarities in their exploration of kind of mythical, legendary a little bit of magical realism elements thrown into this seemingly regular story. And I feel like Rabbi Arnott did it so amazingly that I'm a little bit less impressed by Max Porter's execution of it. And then the other thing he did, which I have not read Leanne Moriarty's Big Little Lies, but I've watched the miniseries, and that story does a similar thing where it explores the impressions of people through the other people in the community, and they're all, you know, gossiping and talking about their impressions of what happened, what the mystery is, and you hear it all through their impressions before the rest of the story unfolds. So I'm not sure if the book does that in the same way, but the miniseries definitely does. So in that way, the section of the book when the disappearance happens is very similar to the way the mystery was told in Big Little Lies. And I think it's a really effective and interesting way to explore a story, but I don't think it's necessarily groundbreaking that Max Porter did it this way. I think, you know, it's a tool that a lot of authors can use, and it's effective, and it was interesting. It didn't blow me away. It didn't and the other thing I'll say about it is that as a parent reading about a child going missing, it's a heavy topic. You know, I mean, it can be a heavy topic for anyone. It's a very emotional and difficult thing to contemplate and read about. But to me, I think some of the threads just didn't connect correctly for me. So the way Lanny was perceived by his parents, his discovery later on, and how neatly tied up that was, and then the kind of use of the dream segment near the end where everything was revealed was interesting, but I struggle a little bit with dreams in novels. Exploring dreams in novels is just, to me, it's tricky because you're trying to use a subconscious element to explain something about the character or something about the plot or something about the story. And as a human being who has dreams when I sleep, I know that your dreams are often not these amazing messages from beyond. They're often just your brain, reliving and processing a lot of information. And they're not necessarily something that holds a lot of meaning. I mean, some really do, and some really affect you as a human, and then other dreams are just your brain processing information. And I feel like, emphasizing them too much in a novel gives them more importance than they often have in life, and therefore takes the story into a place where it becomes more magical realism than maybe you were hoping for. Anyway, I don't know. Let me know how you feel about dreams in novels. So I have now read Lanny, Women Talking, and 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World. And I'm going to end this vlog here, and I will wrap up A Single Thread and Girl, Woman, Other in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching, and if you've read these books and you have any thoughts to convey about them, I'd be very interested to hear those. Talk to you soon.